Imagine a time before 90-inch television screens were sold at Walmart for $200 on Black Friday. A time when the family would gather round one rabbit-eared black and white television to watch a show on one of the 4 channels they had available to them. Now, imagine a time in the immediate aftermath of World War II when everyone needed a good laugh because of war. In that time, you may have turned on your televisions after enjoying your mother's pot roast and carrot dinner to see young men such as Carl Reiner, Sid Caesar, and Mel Brooks performing comedic routines that gave you gut-busting laughs. The premises seemed so simple, yet the genius that went into crafting these bits would soon shape the entire direction of the art of comedy. These men would go on to become some of the most iconic figures in the history of entertainment. Sadly, as time does to us all, many of these icons have left us. But one figure has stood the test of time and remains vibrant as ever. It's time we find out just what the f*** happened to Mel Brooks. But to truly understand what the f*** happened to Mel Brooks, we must begin at the beginning, and the beginning began when he was born on his birthday, 1926, Brooklyn, New York, to the name Melvin James Kaminsky. His father passed away when little Mel was just 2 years old. This tragic event would later lead Mel Brooks to think that a lot of his humor was derived from a place of anger and hostility that he had from a young age, when he would use comedy to spare himself from his pain and problems. By the age of 14, Mel Brooks would be working as a poolside entertainer at a second-rate hotel, where he would keep guests entertained with his now trademark dark humor. That's right, teenage Mel Brooks would just walk around a pool in a hotel and tell people jokes. Dark, humorous jokes. Melvin Brooks, as he had officially changed his name to pay honor to his mother, whose maiden name was Brookman, would be recruited into the United States Army after testing highly on his IQ test. Cause sometimes you gots to be smart to be funny. And yeah, in case you don't know, history and stuff, this was World War II, the second one of the World Wars. Brooks would serve as a combat engineer, where he would be one of many soldiers who took part in the famed Battle of the Bulge. Mel Brooks says that he would sing all the time to help himself get over seeing dead bodies along the roadside. But in true Mel Brooks fashion, the song that he would sing so loudly so that all the Nazis could hear, that song would be Toot Toot Tootsie by the famed Jewish singer Al Jolson. But yeah, using music and comedy to stand up and fight the Nazis was something that we would often see in his work later on in his career. But the dude was doing the real thing on the front lines of WW2. Once the war ended, World War II, Mel Brooks would join the Special Services Division of the Army, where he would tour Army bases as a comedian before being made a corporal and taking charge of all the entertainment at their base in West Germany. Wow, Mel Brooks is a war hero, a hilarious war hero. So, thank you for your service, sir.
Tootsie, goodbye!
After being honorably discharged from the Army, Mel Brooks would get started working at various nightclubs. He mainly worked as part of the ensemble band as a drummer and a pianist, until one fateful night, one of the comics couldn't make it, and Brooks was able to get on stage for the first time and perform some of his comedy. This would lead to him becoming a crowd favorite, with his mix of Jewish-based jokes and movie star impressions. Mel Brooks would then be hired to write on Sid Caesar's now iconic Show of Shows, alongside fellow writer Carl Reiner. In 1954, Caesar and Brooks would launch Caesar's Hour, which would net Brooks 3 consecutive Emmy nominations for Best Comedy Writing. By this time, Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner had formed a strong friendship, with their shared comedic stylings and love of improvisation, also known as improv. Yes, and the duo would create the most enduring two-man acts of all time when they created the 2,000-year-old man bit, which saw Carl Reiner as the straight man, interviewing Mel Brooks as the man who is 2,000 years old. They would talk about many topics such as witnessing the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. By 1962, Mel Brooks would be dabbling in Broadway when he penned the book for All American, which would receive 2 Tony nominations. In 1963, Mel Brooks would help create the Oscar-winning short animated film, The Critic. And then he would take his talents to television, when he helped create the iconic show, Get Smart, with Mel Brooks saying that he was sick of seeing polished comedies on TV. He wanted to be the first person to create a show about a complete idiot, which was a smart idea. He would be nominated for an Emmy for Outstanding Writing, but would ultimately take a back seat to the show after its first season.
Codro, I want new passwords and countersigns.
While promoting his play All American, a reporter asked Mel Brooks what he had in the works, which he replied, "Springtime for Hitler," evoking his dry wit, where you aren't quite sure if he's joking or not, but he's usually joking. But sometimes it's a little bit of A and a little bit of B, as Springtime for Hitler was the launch pad for Mel Brooks' first feature-length screenplay, The Producers. It's the story of a producer deciding that he could make more money from a flop than a hit. And of course, making a movie about people making a musical about Hitler was a controversial idea, and no studio would dare go near it. So Mel Brooks found an independent distributor who would release the film in a limited capacity. This film, The Producers, would not be a massive hit in its time. Financially, ironically, it kind of flopped, but it was respected because Mel Brooks won the Oscar for Best Story and Screenplay written directly for the screen at the 41st Annual Academy Awards. Brooks would return to the director's chair for the film The 12 Chairs in 1970. This film, The 12 Chairs, would receive solid reviews, hailing it as one of the funniest films of that year, 1970, but would ultimately not be a financial success. Luckily, Mel Brooks had a few ideas brewing that would take him from Oscar-winning writer to full-blown legend. While voicing the blonde-haired cartoon man on The Electric Company, Mel Brooks would write and direct 2 of the biggest, funniest comedies ever made, 1974's Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. That's right, Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein both came out the same frickin' year. Both of these films would be selected for preservation by the Library of Congress National Film Registry as culturally and historically and aesthetically significant pieces of work, while Young Frankenstein would receive an Academy Award nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay, and Blazing Saddles would receive a nomination for Best Song, with lyrics penned by Mel Brooks.
He rode a blazing saddle.
Blazing Saddles would also win the Writers Guild Award for Best Comedy Screenplay written directly for the screen. Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles would carry budgets of under $3 million, while earning massive box office dollars to the tune of $86.2 million for Young Frankenstein and $119.6 million for Blazing Saddles. Young Frankenstein is a frickin' beautiful movie. Mel Brooks decides to make fun of this horror genre by just making a movie that looks like a beautiful horror film from that time period. And yeah, don't get me wrong, the Boris Karloff Frankenstein movies are iconic and stuff, but actually, many could argue, that this movie, Young Frankenstein, the parody of Frankenstein, has become more iconic and more recognizable than the original. the parody has surpassed the source material. You know, it's kind of like how nobody remembers airport, but everybody remembers airplane. I was actually watching Bride of Frankenstein and was like, oh, that's just like that scene in Young Frankenstein. See what I'm saying? It's a beautiful thing. And yeah, then there's Blazing Saddles, a pitch-perfect satire of the Western genre, mixed with, you know, all those racial tensions and conflicts that were going on during that time. Social commentary, you know. And y'all know how it is. In today's world, many people have become, I don't know, too sensitive or lacking of a sense of humor or don't fully understand satire and parody. But this movie, Blazing Saddles, has come under some scrutiny for its racially charged content. But luckily, lots of smarter peoples have prevailed at realizing that the quote-unquote racist jokes in Blazing Saddles are actually jokes that are making fun of racism. Because here's a fun f***ing fact, racism is bad, and making fun of it is hilarious.
Hey, where are the white women at?
Mel Brooks would then step behind the camera for his next satirical takedown, this time aimed at the movie industry itself, with 1976's Silent Movie, which I think is actually a silent movie. I don't think they say things in this movie, which you gotta respect, because it was 1976 and they totally could have said things with the technology available. This film, Silent Movie, tells of a producer in the present day of 1976 trying to get a studio to produce a silent film. So 1976's Silent Movie is a silent movie set in 1976 about a guy trying to make a silent movie in 1976. This time Mel Brooks decided to keep his budgets down, and this one only cost $4 million to make, which allowed it to see some profit, taking in $36.1 million worldwide. And it would earn Mel Brooks a Best Actor nomination at the Golden Globes, back when people cared about the Golden Globes, and he would get another nomination from the Writers Guild for Best Comedy Writing, written directly for the screen. He would continue to poke fun at the movie industry. Mel Brooks would follow up Silent Movie with the Alfred Hitchcock parody High Anxiety. Mel Brooks would even consult with Alfred Hitchcock himself when writing the screenplay for this film. Most people enjoyed this comedy, as audiences awarded it $31 million from a $4 million budget. After appearing in The Muppet Movie, Mel Brooks would launch his own production company, Brooks Films, by taking on the feature directorial debut of his wife, Anne Bancroft, with the Dom DeLuise starring Fatso in 1980. That same year, Mel Brooks' assistant director on High Anxiety, Jonathan Sanger, would come to Mel with a unique script called The Elephant Man, which Mel Brooks quickly agreed to help finance. But Mr. Brooks remains uncredited on this dramatic David Lynch directed film. Mel Brooks personally asked his name to be removed from the credits because it would probably confuse the audience. Many would walk into the theater expecting to see a comedy, but The Elephant Man, it's not that funny. But this truly shows how dedicated Mel Brooks is to his films. He's willing to take his name out of there as executive producer in order to make the film, you know, better. Imagine looking at the poster and you're like, hey, look, it's Mel Brooks' Elephant Man. He would return behind the camera for 1981's History of the World, Part 1. Which, in keeping with the very intelligent humor of Mel Brooks, yes, Mel Brooks' humor is incredibly intelligent. It is why he is able to do such stupid things to such perfection, because you gotta be smart to be stupid. But yeah, in keeping with that style of humor, the title of this film, History of the World Part 1, is derived from the Sir Walter Raleigh play, The History of the World, which was intended to be told throughout several volumes, but only the first was ever completed. So like, the title itself is a joke, ha 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 ha.
Holy shit!
Then Mel Brooks would produce and star in Alan Johnson's directorial debut, To Be or Not to Be in 1983. The remake of the 1942 film with the same name, To Be or Not to Be, would allow Mel Brooks to star alongside his wife, Anne Bancroft, from The Graduate. But this film, unfortunately, would not be a profitable endeavor, as it only managed to make $13 million off a $9 million budget. Sadly, that would not be the only box office bomb Mel Brooks would produce in the 1980s. In 1986, he would help finance Solarbabies. Originally agreeing to just a $5 million budget, Mel Brooks was talked into adding another $20 million. Unfortunately, the production of Solarbabies was riddled with so many problems that Mel Brooks reportedly had to fly to set one day and threatened to fire everyone unless they got back to work and made a better movie. The film Solarbabies would be a massive bomb, pulling in just $1.6 million. So you would think that Mel Brooks would totally give up on sci-fi at that time, but no. He would frickin' embrace it and parody it to perfection. Because in 1986 came the film Spaceballs. And remember kids, at that time it was actually kind of revolutionary to make fun of Star Wars. So yeah, this film, Spaceballs, plays as a straight-up parody of the Star Wars franchise, and just like the blessing he got from Alfred Hitchcock, Mel Brooks was given a full Jedi blessing from Star Wars creator George Lucas to make fun of anything and everything in the Star Wars galaxy. With one caveat. There could be absolutely no merchandising, which of course led to one of the funniest scenes in the movie. This film, Spaceballs, wouldn't exactly garner the strongest of reviews upon its initial release, because those pesky critics were comparing it to his earlier better films. But Spaceballs, it just has a charm and shows that Mel Brooks can evolve with his humor. Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, that's so 1970s, and Spaceballs, it's so the 80s, if you get what I'm saying. And when he gets to the 90s, those films, they're like so 90s. And he would kick off those 1990s by voicing Mr. Toilet Man in Look Who's Talking 2, before stepping back into the director's chair for 1991's Life Stinks, which would break from Mel Brooks' tried and true formula of parodies to actually tell an original story. But the results were less than stellar, with critics saying that Mel Brooks was actually better at making fun of people like the main character in the film, Life Stinks, than trying to humanize the character in the film, Life Stinks. While audiences also weren't exactly amused by Life Stinks, they thought it stunk and didn't give it money. But luckily, his next film would see him bounce back to the iconic heights he was used to, as he would release Robin Hood, Men in Tights in 1993. Audiences absolutely loved this musical tale of Robin Hood to the tune of $72 million worldwide, off a $20 million budget. Robin Hood Men in Tights has gone on to become one of Mel Brooks' best-selling films, and may be another case of the parody being remembered more than the source material. No offense, Kevin Costner and Errol Flynn.
We're men, manly men, we're men in tights. Yes!
Mel Brooks would then cameo in the Little Rascals movie, before returning to the director's chair for what is to date his final time, for Dracula, Dead and Loving It, teaming up with the amazing Leslie Nielsen. But sadly, a lot of us Mel Brooks fans really tried our best to like this movie, but eventually had to admit that it's not very funny. Dracula, Dead and Loving It does follow the traditional Mel Brooks model, but it just seems to miss the joke at every turn. It had a $30 million budget and was only able to recoup $10 million, making it one of Mel Brooks' biggest bombs. So, possibly because of the massive failure that is Dracula, Dead and Loving It, Mel Brooks would take a bit of a break from crafting stories to just sit back and enjoy the accolades he had earned by turning up in guest spots in many prominent programs, including Frasier, The Simpsons, Curb Your Enthusiasm, and Mad About You, for which he would win 3 consecutive Emmy Awards for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Comedy Series. It was like almost every time Mel Brooks made a guest appearance on a TV show, he would win an Emmy. I bet he was just wandering around the studio and they're like, "Oh, you're in the show now, here's an Emmy."
Hey, let's do that 2,000-pound man thing. I'll be that Carl Reiner guy and you be what's-his-face.
But his legend was only about to get bigger when he decided to take his Oscar-winning film about producers on Broadway, The Producers, to the actual stages of Broadway in 2001, where this play would set the record for the most wins in the history of the Tony Awards, where it won 12, including 3 statues to Brooks, securing him an EGOT status. That's where you win an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. And he won the Grammy in 1999 for Best Spoken Language Comedy Album for the 2,000-year-old man in the year 2000. So yeah, Mel Brooks, he got an EGOT. The success of the play, The Producers, would lead to a big screen adaptation in 2005. So The Producers was a movie about a play that became a play, and then that play was adapted into a movie about a play. A musical, whatever you f***ing call them. But sadly, the 2005 Producers movie musical failed to capture the magic of the stage version, ultimately becoming a box office bomb. Kaboom.
You made a fool out of Hitler! He didn't need our help!
Then sadly, in 2005, Mel Brooks suffered the loss of his wife of over 40 years when the Oscar-winning icon Anne Bancroft passed away on June 6th of that year. Mel Brooks would take some time off to grieve the loss, alongside their son, Max Brooks, the guy who wrote those World War Z books. But Mr. Mel would soon be back on the stages of Broadway with the 2007 musical adaptation of Young Frankenstein. This Young Frankenstein play would not exactly enter the zeitgeist the way his Producers adaptation had, but it still managed to secure a Broadway.com Audience Award for Favorite New Broadway Musical, and it would receive 3 Tony nominations. On TV, Mel Brooks was everywhere, receiving the acclaim due to a person as iconic as Mel Brooks. Whether he was receiving the AFI Lifetime Achievement Award, a Kennedy Center honor, or appearing on TV shows like the Spaceballs animated series, his iconic, hilarious, raspy voice could also be heard on the big screen in many hit films, like Robots, Mr. Peabody and Sherman, Hotel Transylvania 2 and 3, Toy Story 4, and that movie Paws of Fury, Legend of Hank, which came out in 2022. Which, oddly enough, this animated puppy dog movie is actually a loose remake of Blazing Saddles, with the original title actually being Blazing Samurai, and Mel Brooks received screenplay credit. So yeah, Paws of Fury, The Legend of Hank is a remake of Blazing Saddles. Do with that information whatever you want. When he wasn't providing smooth vocals, he would be getting nominated for an Emmy by simply being himself on stage, with the 2012 Emmy-nominated Mel Brooks and Dick Cavett Together Again show, and 2015's double Emmy-nominated Mel Brooks Live at the Geffen. That is how good Mel Brooks is. All he has to do is discuss his career, and it's worthy of awards.
Melvin Brooks!
Mel Brooks is one of the last remaining stars of an era of show business that shaped an entire industry. The word legend can be thrown around a lot, and I'm very guilty of that. I probably call everybody we cover on this show a legend, but this time I actually mean it. This funny man right here always seems to understand what's going on in pop culture, no matter what decade he's in. He always knows exactly what intellectual property or genre to poke fun at, like horror films, or Hollywood, or westerns, or racism, or Star Wars, or Nazis, or Kevin Costner. He always has his funny little finger on what audiences wanted to laugh at that time, because of the zeitgeist, or whatever the that means. But recently, he didn't quite understand what audiences wanted with History of the World Part 2, which he didn't direct, but, you know, his name is there. And it is great that it shows that Mel Brooks is far from finished. Mel Brooks' material is still being made. But yeah, like I said, earlier this year, Hulu released an unnecessary sequel series called History of the World Part 2, which completely ruins the joke of calling the first one Part 1, but you know, whatever. And actually, many critics liked History of the World Part 2, but it does kind of feel like the wrong path to take right now. Out of all the stuff they could do with this Mel Brooks cinematic universe, this wasn't exactly what we wanted. But you know what? Half of all the frickin' funny people in Hollywood are in this thing simply because they wanted to be a part of the Mel Brooks legacy of laughter. They wanted to literally be a part of history by being in the History of the World Part 2. Now on Hulu.
History of the World, Part 2!
And we cannot forget that very recently it was announced that Mr. Brooks would be a recipient of an honorary Oscar at next year's Academy Awards. And he just had his 97th birthday. In a recent interview with People magazine, Mel Brooks said, "A long time ago, I was given a choice. I had an offer to be working as an apprentice accountant or as a coffee runner in show business. I'm still glad I chose the coffee." And with that said, I think we can all absolutely agree that nobody should give a fuck about what the fuck happened to Mel Brooks, because he's doing just fine.
Marker?
Ow!
That'll do it.
Just to scare you.
You still got it.